a number of Thank you very much. So a number of people have contacted to say they couldn't make the session today, but would like to hear more information on the event. So the event is being recorded and will be shared on YouTube and accessible via the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning Board website. So the event today, we are taking questions, or will be taking questions throughout the event by using the chat function. So if you have any questions on that, please ask them through the chat function, and we will do our best to get to all of those during the session today. So without further ado, I would like to hand things over to our Acting Mayor, Councillor Amy Finn.
Good morning. I'd like to acknowledge that the land that is known as Chatham-Kent today is the traditional land of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. These Indigenous nations, known as the Anishinaabe and Lenape, agreed to the mutual sharing of the land with obligations and responsibilities to the environment. Chatham-Kent neighbors, the Lenape, Delaware Nations, which is part of the McKee Purchase Treaty, as well as the unceded territory of the Bekesnawag Walpole Island First Nations. Chatham-Kent continues to be home to diverse First Nations peoples and Métis peoples. Together, we recognize our collective responsibilities to the land and water. We invite you to reflect upon this land acknowledgement, what it means to you, and how you are upholding the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. And again, good morning. Welcome to the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning Board's annual labor market update. As acting mayor, I am honored to bring greetings on behalf of Mayor Caniff and Council. Workforce planning is an important topic and one that seems to be talked about over the years. A topic that predates the pandemic, but brought to the forefront more so over the last 2 years. As we position Chatham-Kent for recovery and growth, workforce planning is a key tool in attracting people and investments to our community, which means having up-to-date labor market information is important and valuable. I look forward to learning more today, and thank you all for attending.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Cecily Coppola, and I'm currently the chair of the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning Board. I am joined on the call today by several, but not all, of my fellow board directors. So I believe I have Mark Benoit, Ron Korstein, Tracy Walker, and Ralph Rolls with us today. So thank you for joining, and thank each of you for taking time out of your day to attend and to learn more with all of us. So as directors, we represent sectors including healthcare, financial services, education, arts and culture, energy, and the not-for-profit sector. We are members of the board because we believe that workforce planning and labor market information are important to our community and for our day-to-day work. I'd like to acknowledge that the project funding received is from the Ministry of Labor, Training and Skills Development. And I'd also like to acknowledge the work of Christy Jacobs, who for over 8 years helped to steer the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning Board and delivered a number of very successful projects. So big thank you to Christy for all that she did over the years to help get us to where we are today. The Workforce Planning Board portfolio now sits within the Municipal Community Attraction and Promotion Division. And as a board, we really do welcome the opportunity to now work alongside Audrey Ansell and Victoria Bonner. Employers report struggles to find talent that will help them to grow. Job seekers continually look for career opportunities in Chatham-Kent, and the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning Board seeks to bridge the gap by providing labor market information that helps employers and job seekers to better understand the labor market. Today, we will learn more about the labor market information specific to Chatham-Kent, and I am now delighted to hand things over to Jody Ball, who will share information on Chatham-Kent's local labor market plan.
Okay, hello everyone. I am going to share my screen before I get started here. And nice to see some familiar names for sure. How's that, everyone? Pretty good? Okay, thanks for the thumbs up. I'm just going to move my video over here. Bear with me while I get where I can see everything here. Okay, so hello, and thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Jody Ball. I'm the director at J Consulting Group, and I am joined today by my colleague, Cassandra Vink of Vink Consulting. She's going to give a wave. Cassandra and I have worked with the Workforce Planning Board, with Christy, with Audrey and other staff and stakeholders last year to prepare the 2021 local labor market plan. And so we're very pleased today to have the opportunity to share with you some of our key findings from this work. So with our time together, and I will make sure I'm respectful of everyone's time. I know there's lots to get accomplished in our 1 hour today. So with our time, we'd like to provide you with an overview of our process in preparing the LLMP and share with you some of the key findings from the consultations with stakeholders as well as the data analysis. So let's get started. As we know, the mandate of the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning Board is to plan, facilitate, and advocate for local workforce development. So as part of this work, the Chatham-Kent Workforce Planning Board prepares, as you know, an annual local labor market plan, as is lovingly known, the LLMP, to present current labor market trends across the municipality and outline opportunities to respond to labor market challenges over the coming year. So the LLMP is intended to support residents and job seekers in finding and maintaining employment, education and employment organizations in identifying gaps and trends in the local labor market, employers in accessing required labor pool and expanding business opportunities, and policymakers in strategic planning and workforce investments. Overall, our process was really focused on two key areas of research, and that was stakeholder engagement and data analysis. As part of the stakeholder engagement, we conducted 14 interviews with local employment service providers and agencies working with job seekers in Chatham-Kent, and we conducted 2 surveys, one with employers and a second with job seekers and residents. Our analysis of data included looking at demographic trends, workforce trends, local industry trends, as well as Employment Ontario service data. Based on the research activities, we've identified several recommendations for the coming year. So as part of our presentation, we'll highlight some of what we heard through, again, the engagement and the data analysis. So as I just mentioned, part of our engagement process, we did conduct 14 telephone or video calls with local employment service providers and agencies. Some of you are here today. Thank you again for your support. So interviews were held with the Adult Language and Learning, Canadian Mental Health Association, Chatham-Kent Chamber of Commerce, Chatham-Kent Employment and Social Services, Chatham-Kent Community Attraction and Promotion, College Boreal, Community Living, Contact North, Goodwill Career Center, JobWorks, Lambton Kent District School Board, St. Clair Employment, St. Clair College, and Tri-County Literacy. And as I also mentioned, we did do 2 surveys. The first was the EmployerOne, where we heard from 45 employers, and the second one, the Jobseeker one, where we heard from 10 job seekers. So what were some of the things that we heard? So one of the main messages was that there are more jobs than people, and that this trend really spans across almost all sectors. Another insight was that job stability is a concern for workers in some sectors. Overall, the pandemic highlighted the instability of the service and tourism sector, for example. And so we heard that for some people, they are looking to develop and learn new skills and options in other sectors. We also heard that vaccine requirements can be a barrier. Just keeping in mind, the survey for our research was done over the summer of 2021, and the interviews were done, I believe, in September. So just a little bit of context for some of the feedback. Stakeholders also told us that employers are making changes in finding employees. So looking at providing more flexibility of hours, offering part-time in areas where they did not previously, perhaps expanding their recruiting area. And also we're seeing a greater willingness to provide some on-the-job training as ways to attract and find employees. We also heard that some employers are having to turn away work or reducing hours due to a lack of workers. Just continuing with the stakeholder insights, we also heard that some people are perhaps choosing not to enter the labor market. Reasons for this may be continued fear of COVID-19, lack of childcare and transportation, which may have been barriers well before the pandemic, and also the availability of those additional income supports at the time. Stakeholders also noted that agencies and educational institutions have had to pivot largely to virtual training and coaching throughout the pandemic, and that most are continuing to offer services online or have a hybrid model in place. We heard that mental health and addictions can be barriers to employment. And we heard from a few stakeholders that for some of their clients with disabilities or clients who are newcomers, that they did feel there were more options available and clients were getting placed more quickly. Some stakeholders also expressed that they are seeing more seniors coming back to work, and this is because the cost of living is going up and seniors may need to come back into the workforce to help cover increasing cost of bills and expenses. So with regard to the employer survey, this graphic on your screen just highlights who we heard from by sector throughout the employer survey. And we did hear from a range of sectors. So the largest proportion of respondents came from educational services, manufacturing and healthcare, and social assistance, as well as finance and insurance, accommodation and food services, agriculture, construction, and arts, entertainment, and recreation, wholesale trade, retail trade, and real estate. And I'll just add, this survey was quite robust, and there is quite a bit of feedback that we received. So I think we're only touching on a couple of the pieces here in the presentation today, but I would just point out that there's much more within the full LLMP if you're interested. So one of the ones we did want to just share was when we asked employers about their impressions of Chatham-Kent, the vast majority, so 89% of, oops, sorry, I didn't move the slide. There we go. Now we're on the same page. The vast majority, so again, 89% of respondents had either an excellent or good general impression of Chatham-Kent as a place to do business. In June 2021, most employers did not report a change in attitude about doing business in Chatham-Kent when compared to 2020. So some 11% reported a more positive attitude, while about 20% reported a more negative attitude, but generally kept the same. In addition, businesses responding to the survey on the impacts of the pandemic expected that impacts on their business would continue into the future. Nevertheless, and what we found interesting is that the vast majority did have a positive outlook for their industry, with 41.5% reporting an excellent outlook and the same percentage reporting a good outlook. So one other finding from the employer survey was that in looking at challenges to growth, employers continue to find it difficult to recruit and retain workers and report workforce skills shortages as a key challenge. Some further report being unable to expand business because of a lack of employees. And while there is demand across all sectors, employers identified several in-demand positions, including welders, industrial painters, programmers and operators, construction laborers, cooks, and registered early childhood educators and teaching assistants. So based on the results from our second survey, which was the Jobseeker Survey, we heard that reasons for searching for a job were mostly to increase income, while other reasons were job dissatisfaction, changing fields, or being overqualified for the current position. The most common aspect that job seekers were looking for in employment was a flexible work schedule. And the most common form of assistance that would help job seekers in their job search were interviewing techniques and skills upgrades. Some were also looking for help with their resumes and career exploration. So again, in addition to the feedback from stakeholders, employers, and job seekers, we did also look at lots of pieces of data analyzing key trends related to demographics, workforce trends, local industry trends, including job postings, as well as analysis of Employment Ontario services. So again, we have a couple slides that we're going to share, but I'll just point that there's quite a bit more within the full report. So starting with population, Chatham-Kent's population has been, as I'm sure you know, relatively constant over the past 10 years, with some more recent growth, and will continue to see an aging population. So with approximately 30% of the current population over the age of 60, while younger cohorts have seen an overall decline in the proportion of the total population. And this aging of the population will likely continue to drive reductions in labor market, sorry. The size of Chatham-Kent's labor force has been on an overall downward trend over the past 10 years, declining by about 15%. Participation rates have also been declining from about 60% in 2018 to 53.7% in 2020. Looking at labor market trends since 2020, Chatham-Kent saw approximately 5,550 people drop out of the labor force at the beginning of the pandemic, but the number of people either employed or seeking employment recovered to pre-pandemic levels in April 2021. Looking at participation by age, in 2019, we found that about 45% of males 65 years and older were still active in the labor market in Chatham-Kent, and this compares to about 38% in Ontario, so quite a bit higher than the provincial average. And in addition, more youth aged 15 to 19 participated in the labor market in Chatham-Kent, so again, about 45%. When we compare to Ontario as a whole, that's about 39%. As with communities across Ontario, businesses in Chatham-Kent have experienced severe impacts because of the pandemic. There have been losses in the number of businesses over the past year, with retail and the restaurant sectors being hit particularly hard. There was a net loss of 22 businesses in retail and 10 in the restaurant sector. Our research also looked at client data for those accessing Employment Ontario services during the reporting period of 2020 to 2021. So looking at employment services specifically, which includes a variety of supports and services to support career needs of individuals and employers, we found that the number of clients served by employment services in Chatham-Kent dropped by over half from the previous year. So a little summary of some of the pieces that stood out for Cassandra and I that we've just shared. The number of people aged 65 and over that are still in the workforce, the recovery of employment even in the hardest hit sectors and among hard hit population cohorts. Generally, employers have a positive outlook for their industries. Employers are, though, facing significant challenges in finding and maintaining employees. And there's been a significant reduction in the number of clients served by employment services. So in summary, while employment levels have improved and are at pre-pandemic level, businesses across the board face challenges in recruiting employees, some having to close doors permanently, some having to reduce hours of operation, and some unable to expand their businesses because of a lack of resources. Boomers retiring, the lack of population growth, hesitancy of workers to re-enter the labor force, and a lack of access to daycare transportation for job seekers are all creating challenges for employers. So as such, we've put forward 3 priorities. The LLMP puts forward 3 priorities. There we go. So the first is to develop resources and continue to support employers and job seekers, foster local partnerships among employers, educators, and agencies, and enhance research of the local labor market. And we've got a couple of recommendations within each of these priorities that I'll just go through. Okay, so under the first priority of developing resources, we really did want to jump off the really important work done to establish Chatham-Kent-Jobs.com. So the first one is to develop a long-term communication strategy to create and sustain awareness of and promote the utilization of Chatham-Kent-Jobs.com. Also, as part of the implementation of Chatham-Kent-Jobs.com, supporting employers in establishing their digital postings and creating their digital footprint. Also hosting a Chatham-Kent Career Discovery Expo with participation from schools, businesses, and agencies. This can provide opportunities for students, young residents to learn about career options and pathways, and to also hear from local business leaders. The fourth one is to create digital literacy workshop series for job seekers and new workers. This was definitely an area we did hear quite a bit of feedback from stakeholders on where some of the skill development needs was really around digital literacy. So training workshops could be created in partnership with local skills development organizations, and topics can be a full range from Microsoft Office, Photoshop, video creating software, job searching, creating a digital footprint, and so on. And then just the last one on this slide is to just really share the results of the 2021 LLMP. So under our second priority, partnerships, we've suggested in looking for ways to increase participation of local businesses, educators, and employment agencies within existing networks, and provide additional opportunities for access to information and discussions. And tied in with that a little bit is design and implement workshop series to share information, stories, and best practices. I think we heard that many people did feel that they were aware of what other agencies were involved in, what some of the programs and initiatives were, and others were not. So really just expanding that partnership and awareness building piece. And then the last one here is to identify opportunities, again, in partnership with businesses, schools, training centers, to increase participation in cooperative and intern programs. And our last slide here, everyone, is the third priority, which is a couple areas of research that we're suggesting there's a need for. So the first is research on barriers, challenges, and opportunities to entering and remaining in the local labor market in order to build a better understanding of the potential causes of workforce shortages and to help focus local workforce development efforts. And the second area of focus for additional research is to engage further with newcomers, employers, the local immigration partnership, and other stakeholders to better understand the needs of newcomer workers. So thank you very much for that time to present this to you. I believe we are leaving a few minutes for some questions. So if it's okay with everyone, I am going to stop sharing, and then maybe we can see if there's any questions Cassandra and I can help with.
I can read one out, Jody.
Thanks, Victoria. Yeah, I'm just trying to get caught up on the chat.
Sure. So thanks for the presentation and recommendations. Can you expand on who would be involved in implementing the recommendations you've identified?
Yeah, great question. I think the recommendations identify a number of partners. So it's our intention that the Workforce Planning Board would certainly take a leadership role in the implementation and look at those closer and decide who we want to reach out to, how we're going to reach out. So I'll maybe put it back to anyone from the Workforce Planning Board if you have initial ideas, but it would be the Workforce Planning Board that would take the leadership in the implementation of those, but certainly I think all of them actually, perhaps all of them are looking at partnerships with local agencies, schools, businesses, and so on.
Jody.
Yeah, go ahead, Audrey.
Yeah, I got a question here. So question is based on, you did a lot of community engagement work and engaged with a lot of partners to develop this plan. So was there any particular aspects of that work in terms of what you heard that really stood out to you and made sort of an impact and left an indelible impression of Chatham-Kent on you in terms of what you heard?
Thanks for the question. There was a lot that we heard that made an impact for sure. I think a lot of the direction of the recommendations certainly came from not just the data, but that feedback. I think one thing that stood out for me was perhaps just the, I guess the depth of the challenges that our employers are facing. Like, it really, all the individuals that we spoke to had businesses that were struggling, and it really did span across so many sectors. So I think just hearing over and over again the challenges that our employers are having in attracting and maintaining employees, while wasn't surprising, I think just the depth of that was interesting for me, for sure.
Jody, I have, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to see if Cassandra had anything to add to that. Otherwise, I do have a question in the chat as well, but I'll.
Okay, go ahead.
And I'm not sure, I'm not sure, Cassandra, if you're going to know off the top of your head, but we have a question about any reasons for the labor market participation being much lower in Chatham-Kent for the 25 to 29-year-olds. That might be something we need to look up.
Yeah, and that was that one. Are you referring to the, like, or do you know if they were referring to like the change during the pandemic or in general versus Ontario?
It doesn't say,
or just versus other age ranges.
Maybe versus other age ranges.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Maybe, although Matt, feel free to jump in if I've articulated that incorrectly. So maybe we'll come back to that.
Sure.
There is a question about digital literacy. Forgive me, I'm reading it as I'm speaking, so hopefully I'm getting it right. Some of this work is already being done. There are several options currently providing training. The awareness for referral is a challenge. How can we better engage and market to all? So I will pose that question to the group. I don't know if we want to have a bit of a dialogue, but I would say that's a really good point, Tracy, and wondering what others think about how to better engage. I think for me, again, one of the things we heard through the engagement process in particular was that, again, some people have an awareness of the programs, of where to go, of who to ask for assistance, and others do not. So I think there's lots of things going on that awareness building is certainly an important piece of the work ahead. And let me know if we're going over time. I think we're okay for another moment or two. I'll maybe just there is a question from someone in the chat here. I'm interested in the reduced number of people accessing employment services. Yes, that was interesting. Do you have any insights about that? And thanks for the presentation. Well, you're welcome. Yeah, we found that interesting as well. I guess my thoughts went to just the pandemic and people just not reaching out to those same services. Cassandra, I know you're probably still looking up something else, but any thoughts on why that dropped by such a large percentage?
Sorry, yes, I was focusing on that other piece. Sorry, which
This
one?
is the drop in the accessing employment services, the Ontario.
Yeah, great question. I think, or my speculation is, part of it is so many nonprofit organizations, when the pandemic first started, really had to pivot in terms of how they were serving people. And so there was a period of time where it was that transition, where people who maybe would come in for service before, or if they would provide those services in person, and then that wasn't an option. And so employers like Employment Ontario providers were really trying to figure out how to continue to serve the same clients in an effective way. I think that some of the individuals come from population groups that may have put sometimes their job searches on hold for a little bit during the pandemic, and sort of that process, whether that is because of other co-occurring health conditions, or responsibilities for childcare, or things like that, that I think it quite likely may have been a combination of both some changes in demand for service over the short term, based just on fluctuations happening related to the pandemic, and ability to serve during the pandemic. But that's some of that is speculation rather than hearing directly. I'm not sure, Jody, whether when you spoke with any of the Employment Ontario agencies, whether they provide any additional context there.
I think you've captured some of it, just with the pivoting to digital and that taking some time, and just services sort of taking this shift in how people are accessing them.
Hi, Jody. It's Matt Keach.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm good. The host took me off mute, and I just wanted to add some context to an earlier question I had asked, and as well, just to add a little bit to what Cassandra just answered from our own experience as an employment service provider. Our caseloads. So for those who are not familiar with what I do, I'm with the Ontario Works program here in Chatham-Kent, and our caseload dropped by about 25% during the pandemic, as many individuals were receiving federal CERB benefits, and were not accessing our services because they were receiving those benefits. So I think that would also be one of the reasons. And as those benefits have stopped, our caseloads have grown already about 17% since September, as people have started to drop off. And then to my earlier question, just noticing the lower labor market participation rates, most glaring amongst 25 to 29-year-olds in Chatham-Kent. I think 83.5% in Chatham-Kent, and 87 compared to 87.3 in Ontario. And amongst all age groups, 68.4 Ontario, 65.5 in Chatham-Kent. I mean, to me, that's about 3,000 individuals in Chatham-Kent that aren't working, that potentially could be working. And how do we connect them to the employment market, or what are the reasons why they're not connected to the employment market? I think that would be very interesting to explore.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. I think it could be a combination of things. I think, sort of across all age groups. I think in higher cost communities, you might have a slightly higher rate, just because more people are put under more pressure to have employment. But in terms of that age, that 25 to 29-year-olds, yeah, I think it is certainly more prominent in females in that age group. So that would be something, be interesting to explore things like some of those pieces. Some of those women would be, childbearing age, whether there are differences between Chatham-Kent in terms of when women are having children, as well as some of the things like availability of access to quality childcare, whether that's influencing some individuals in that age range, as well as, availability of entry level positions for individuals coming out of post-secondary education and that sort of thing.
I know we're getting really tight on our time. I just want to quickly, because I think it might be a quick response to a question, and I think it's come up a couple times around when I mentioned that employees are looking for flexible schedules, and what does that mean? So I think it means both. The person who asked the question suggested, does that mean part-time, or does that mean rotating or regular? And I think it means both. I think people are looking for flexibility in the total number of hours that they need to commit to, but also looking for that flexibility. And that could be around childcare as well, perhaps, I'm not sure, but I think it means both, just to get back to that question.
Okay, Jody and Cassandra, I think time is moving on, and we got another few bits to get through. I know we could probably chat about the LMP all day, every day. So thank you both very much for all the work that you've done on this. You can see the level of interest in this report and the level of engagement that you had as you did your work across the community. So again, thank you very much for all that you've done with us there. So moving on. The Workforce Planning Board itself, as Cecily mentioned earlier, the work is funded by the Ministry of Labour, Training and Skills Development. And each year, the board basically conducts 3 projects. So you've just heard about the local labour market plan from Cassandra and Jody. We also had an EmployerOne survey this year. And then the third project was an understanding workforce attraction and retention characteristics. So as Jody pointed out, obviously a lot of the research, the work, we're just giving a snapshot of what's available and the findings today for all of these. So I will kind of cover the EmployerOne piece, but be aware that there's a lot more information that lies behind this survey. So the 2022 EmployerOne survey results, the survey itself ran for the month of January. Here in Chatham-Kent. And in terms of some of the high-level data pieces, primarily heard from the for-profit sector. So 60% of respondents were in for-profit, and then split between 25% not-for-profit and 16% government or public sector. What's interesting, I think, a note and worth noting for this year is that the total number of responses was significantly lower than in previous years. There was no survey in 2021. Obviously, in the height of the pandemic, there were surveys everywhere, but no EmployerOne survey this year. So that explains some of the drop-off. In addition, the survey ran for the month of January 2022. And if you recall, we were still under some COVID restrictions and measures there. So again, employers preoccupied with running their day-to-day operations in their businesses. Nevertheless, from 101 responses, we do have a snapshot, a point-in-time assessment of what employers were experiencing, what they had experienced throughout 2021. But for the 101 respondents that we had to the survey, they reported a total of over just 14,000 employees in Chatham-Kent. So if you think of our total workforce of, around about 50,000, it's not an insignificant number of employees that we heard from. The top sectors that hired in 2021, you can see on the top left there, manufacturing was number 1, followed by healthcare and social assistance, which again is unsurprising, probably given the COVID pandemic. Agriculture, forestry, fishing and hunting was number 3 last year. Educational services, and then other services, which is really a catch-all for pretty well any other service you can imagine, would be supplied in the community. And then looking ahead in terms of employers' expectations for these sectors that would hire in 2022, other services is number 1 there, then healthcare, then educational services, and then manufacturing. So they would be the top 4 there. In terms of recruitment methods, I think this is an interesting one for Chatham-Kent. Number 1 was using online job boards and postings. Number 2 was word of mouth and personal contacts and referrals. 3 was social media. 4 was a company website. And then number 5 were in government employment centres or websites. But essentially of the top 5 there, the vast majority are basically speaking to digital postings, and the fact that employers are getting their information onto digital job boards, which means that if you're looking to attract employees who aren't driving past your business and don't necessarily know somebody who works there, those postings are visible. What's also interesting there is the targeted areas for recruitment by Chatham-Kent employers in 2021. The vast majority are still going locally, 69% there, looking locally. 30% or so were looking provincially, 8.9% looking nationally, and then internationally is 7%. So definitely employers are widening their net in terms of where they're looking for employees. And then just some key highlights. We mentioned the first one there in terms of the number of employees. 26 respondents, which is effectively 26% of respondents there, had hired recent post-secondary graduates. So that means that there are opportunities in our community for new grads. There were more reported hires than separations, which aligns with what Jody has found in her work. The majority of those hired in 2021 were from within Chatham-Kent, so it suggests employees moving around within the community from employers to employer. Employers continue to looking for soft skills, and many are also looking for employees with computer and digital skills. So I don't think that would be a surprise necessarily to anyone. And then Jody and Cassandra there mentioned some of those stats around workforce, and maybe that's sort of things that impact the ability of parents to join the workforce. And 36.5% of employers reported that their ability to hire, attract, retain employees was impacted by lack of access to childcare for those employees. So it's definitely an issue in our community. So again, happy to take any questions on this. It is just an oversight snapshot of a more richer data set on the EmployerOne survey, which is available at the ckworkforcedev.com website under the Labour Market Information or LMI tab. And you can absolutely find more information there or reach out to the Workforce Planning Board at any point in time for information there. So on that note, moving on to our third project, which is understanding workforce attraction and retention.
Thanks, Audrey. I'm just gonna get my presentation up here. Oops. And that's not presenting quite the way I hoped it would. Can you see just the presentation now? Yeah, okay. So I will be pretty high level as well and quick, because I see we're moving on here, but the full report for understanding workforce attraction and retention characteristics is also available at the same website, and we'll share it at the end of the presentation. But this report provides really a great foundation for better understanding who is moving into Chatham-Kent and who is out, and then who is commuting in and out of the community as well, largely based on 2016 census data being the most relevant or the most available, most recently available at the time. And we'll be looking to update that with 2021 census, as well as digging into some of the high-level trends that were unearthed within the study in the coming year. So you'll hear more from us on that. So I'll show you briefly just some of the high levels information that was shared. The report includes, as I said, both absolute numbers of commuters and movers, but it also breaks it down by some demographic information, being gender, age cohort, educational attainment, and occupation. And then it starts to touch on some affordability factors around cost of living and income levels. Again, the income a little bit more dated with 2016, but the cost of living touching on some of the changing trends we're seeing more recently. And then finally looking at remote work and how that will impact or is impacting our community, both for employers and for job seekers. So this year we do look forward to seeing how those trends have evolved, and then digging a little bit deeper into the reasons why there might be some gaps in labor that those skills are needed locally, why they might be leaving. So just to give you kind of a snapshot of where we are losing talent that is moving out of the community to, largely our surrounding communities, Essex, Lambton, Middlesex, and then upwards to the Waterloo-Wellington region. But we are seeing some small gains, as anecdotally people are probably aware, from the GTA, Niagara-Hamilton type region. So some suggestions for affordability there, but things that we'll look closer at. And then commuters follows a fairly similar trend. We're losing a number of talent commuting out of our community into those surrounding areas. So Essex, Lambton, Middlesex, and then some smaller gains coming in, notably from Elgin area. So here too, just to reiterate, this is a snapshot. I just pulled the top 5 losses based on lower skills, which is what we're looking at now, to give you an idea. But there is a fulsome list of occupations in the report. So our team is happy to help find information you might be looking for based on occupation, and you can access it at ckworkforcedev.com. The full report is available. But you'll see noted here, we've compared income as one assumed factor for losing talent from Chatham-Kent to Essex and Lambton. And this chart itself notes that that's not always the case, that Chatham-Kent has a lower wage rate, but generally speaking, the report did see some of those trends there. And similarly for the skilled worker level, the chart breaks down, a few charts break down along those lines. You can see a snapshot of the top 5 skills lost by occupation level, and some of those same trends as well. So I hope it gives you a little bit of excitement about what is available, and we definitely encourage you to go to the website to dig in, or to reach out to us to see what the report is saying. Again, largely based on the 2016 data, so we will be engaging with the public and with stakeholders locally to dig into this a little bit more and update on 2021 census once that's available. Similarly, on ckworkforcedev.com, you'll find a number of labor market information and previous reports. So if you're not already familiar, we encourage you to visit the website on the screen here, including monthly unemployment and participation rates, which we are also working on a newsletter to share out with partners. So if you're interested in joining that LMI database, please contact us. We'll have contact information at the end, and we look forward to sharing those out regularly. A secondary spot to find labor market information ongoing is chathamkentjobs.com. So again, if you're not already familiar, please check out the website. It's a new web tool that consolidates job postings from over 30 separate job boards into one user-friendly space where you can see jobs available in Chatham-Kent. If you're not already posting jobs online, we definitely encourage you to do so, because the tool will help to get that message out further. It also provides labor market information that anyone can access. So things like monthly job demand reports and job seeker reports helps us to get a better idea really of what's going on locally. So both of those are available online, and we are happy to help you find it if you don't see what you're looking for. We have other information as well that maybe isn't online, so our team is here for that to help you. Finally, we want to hear from you about the presentations that you saw today and about the reports that were sent to you by email. You should have seen a couple of emails come through. There's SurveyMonkey links for each of the 3 presentations and the 3 reports that were shared today, and we would love, it takes about a minute to complete them each. So please respond to those by the end of the day. We'll send a reminder after this as well. So please take a moment to do that. And that is all for me. I will turn it back to Cecily now. And
I'm here. Now I'm here. Hello, everybody. So just being mindful of time, Thank you so very much for taking time out of what I know are all of your busy schedules to attend today's session. Please do take the time to complete the feedback surveys. They really will just help to inform us on next steps and going forward. So we really would appreciate that. And again, just thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day. You get 10 minutes back of your time.